Good morning, everybody. Today, we are fortunate to have with us Lt Col JS Sodhi, who's a prominent voice in the media and amongst the think tank. Today, he'll be speaking to us on a very recent incident which happened in Delhi involving radicalized doctors, now being referred to as white collar module, initiated maybe from across the borders, but greatly radicalized within the nation, who were involved in conduct of incident in Delhi, wherein we lost around 13 lives, and any big terror-related incident which happens in Delhi, particularly, gets that kind of mileage, visibility, and bite across the world, which has an impact on India's security apparatus and its standing internationally. It's a very important subject for all of us. As a nation, we have been suffering from the scourge of terrorism. The recent one, of course, the Jammu and Kashmir, but we've had terror and terrorism in form of militancy earlier in Punjab, in the northeast, and there cannot be a standard response or a mechanism to take on terrorism because it keeps changing its shape, size, color. So with this as a background, I'll request Akshita to introduce the speaker.
Good morning, all. Lt Col JS Sodhi retired as a veteran from the Bombay Sappers Corps of Engineers of the Indian Army with over 21 years of service. He is a panel member and advisor, National Commission for Minorities, Ministry of Minority Affairs, Government of India. He is also the founder editor, Global Strategic and Defense News and GSD in Hindi. He is an alumnus of the National Defense Academy, Khadakwasla, Pune, and the Indian Military Academy, Dehradun. He is a civil engineer, having completed his BTech from the College of Military Engineering, Pune, and an MTech in Structures from the Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur. He has also completed an MBA in Project Management and an LLB. He has done a diploma in both French and Russian foreign languages. He has been awarded the General Officer Commanding in Chief's Commendation Card in 2007 and the Chief of Army Staff's Commendation Card in 2013. He is an international media personality whose expert commentary on defense and strategic issues is frequently featured across leading Indian and international publications, television news channels, FM radios, and podcasts. He is an awardee of the Lifetime Achievement Award for his work in the electronic media and print media, and the Icon of the Year Award for his contribution in the field of defense and strategic affairs. Ken Sodhi has authored the book China's War Clouds, The Great Chinese Checkmate.
Over to you.
Jai Hind. First and foremost, my immense gratitude and heartfelt thanks to Major General Ashok Kumar and Brigadier Colonel Ranjit Singh for having given me the opportunity to share my views. I'm very grateful that I am speaking in one of the most eminent think tanks, not only of India, but of the entire world. It is indeed my heartfelt gratitude and proud privilege too. Today's topic assumes greater significance in view of what happened on 10th November. The incident which happened near the Red Fort in Delhi shook every conscience that a person could think of. Because it was probably for the first time that we saw trained professionals taking part in a terror attack coming from that profession of being doctors who have always been trained to save human lives. Whenever we or anyone of a family member has fallen ill, any doctor we have gone to has always said, I'll do my best. We'll save him or her. So it is always expected that a person who's had the formal training, who's put in so much of service, for humanity to save a human life would one day be planning to take human lives. So that probably was one thing which shook each one of us. The topic today on which I'm going to speak on is understanding radicalization dynamics in Kashmir, from ideological extremism to white collar terror. This word white collar terror actually today sends terror in each one of us, which I'll explain as I go on in my talk. Why is it important that this particular thing should be addressed? It is because this is the half front which we have been hearing. I would like to take your attention back to history. In 1938 and 1939, for 2 years before Hitler invaded Poland on 1st September 1939, 1.5 years prior to that, he annexed 5 countries with 100 million people without virtually firing a shot or without virtually losing a German life. And how did he do it? His modus operandi was very simple: use the half front. What he would do, people in those countries, some of them who he could purchase by way of money power or by getting them indoctrinated to the Nazi theory, he would prop them up. At the opportune time when he decided to annex that country, these people would create mayhem in that country. And it would be easy victory for him. And this he did in 5 countries. 2 specific examples more I would like to give before I come to the main talk, because that is where the half front assumes the most dangerous dimension. You see, when Hitler invaded Poland on 1st September 1939, for almost 2 years, Britain kept on egging America to take part in the war. America would not come in the war. Why? Because Hitler's men in USA would regularly take out front page advertisements in leading American newspapers, exhorting that Americans should not take part in war, that every American life matters, America first, American first. It was only when America was attacked by the Japanese in the Pearl Harbor attack, then America entered the World War II. So for 2 years, they didn't, because of a successful kind of a half front which Hitler had created in America too. In 1942, when Hitler launched Operation Sea Lion to invade Britain, one of his persons had created 6 secret units in London, whose task was to create mayhem and violence in London the day the German forces would have landed on the British beach. They didn't land. So that's why these 6 units were never activated. So this is the kind of danger that the half front can create. It is not few terrorists here and there. It is part of a bigger plan. And why it assumed more importance is, on 17 March this year, General Upendra Dwivedi, the Chief Army Staff of the Indian Army, stated that two-front war on India is no longer a possibility, it's a reality. On 9 July this year, General Anil Chauhan, the Chief of Defense Staff of the Indian Armed Forces, stated that the way the proximity of China, Pakistan, and Bangladesh is increasing, it is going to create security and stability dynamics problems for India in the times ahead. So this is where the half front will come into play if it is not curbed and checked on a war footing on a national mission. With this, I come to my talk proper. I shall be covering my talk in 5 phases. Phase 1, I shall discuss the Multan Conference of 1972. In phase 2, the fundamental life cycle of terrorism. In phase 3, the profile of global terrorists till 2001. In phase 4, terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir post 2019. And the last phase, curbing ideological extremism and white collar terror. Coming into phase 1, that is Multan Conference of 1972. We need to understand this because this is the genesis of how terrorism came in an organized manner in India. After India defeated Pakistan in the 1971 war and Pakistan was split into two nations, that was December 71. The next month, on 24th January, in the city of Multan in Pakistan, a conference was held, which is known as the Multan Conference. This conference was chaired by Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, who was then the Prime Minister of Pakistan. In this conference, three important decisions were taken for the future of Pakistan. One, Pakistan will go nuclear, which they eventually did in 1998 when they carried out the two nuclear blasts. Second, Pakistan will support terrorism in India. This policy became a military doctrine in 1977 when General Ziaul Haq took over power in a coup and bleeding India with 1,000 cuts as a military doctrine was formulated, which till date is taught to the officers of the Pakistan Army, Navy and Air Force during the Staff College in Quetta, Pakistan. The first time that they used terrorism as an instrument of state policy was in the state of Punjab, which went on for 15 years from 1980 to 1995, in which almost 12,000 people lost their lives. And as terrorism in Punjab was waning, they started terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir in end 89, which till date has been about 36 years, and still terrorism is continuing. And the third decision taken in the Multan conference was Pakistan will wage a war on India for Jammu and Kashmir. Now, this third point, Pakistan was not able to do anything for a long time because militarily, Pakistan knew it is weak compared to India. Whatever military conflicts were held, always India emerged victorious. But Pakistan saw a ray of hope when on 14 March 2013, Xi Jinping became the president of China for the first time. And thereafter started the close cooperation between China and Pakistan, which eventually will result in a two-front war. Now, this is the point where terrorism also has an angle to it. Pakistan will not allow terrorism to end in Jammu and Kashmir till 2030, because anytime after 2030, China and Pakistan will wage the two-front war on India. So we have to look at this point that terrorism will be kept alive by Pakistan. Hence, we have to have a new look towards combating terrorism. Why Pakistan will not end terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir? Because that is the pretext it will use to wage the war on India. Because the first attack in the two-front war will come from Pakistan, where it will use the pretext of terrorism, and then China will jump in for Arunachal Pradesh. So the Multan conference started the terrorism in India on an official note. But not that there were no terrorist attacks before. On 13th February 1967, Charan Das, a BSF constable, was killed in Jammu and Kashmir by terrorists belonging to an organization called Al-Fatah. Al-Fatah was a total homegrown terrorist organization. It didn't find mass base in Jammu and Kashmir. And whatever little of these terror attacks it did, like killing of Charan Das in February 67 or looting of a bank, eventually this organization was finished because there was not much support coming from Pakistan. And the biggest thing, there was not much support from the local Kashmiri population. But things changed after Pakistan started using terrorism as an instrument of state policy. Coming on to phase two, that is the fundamental cycle of terrorism. It is here that we are able to understand what exactly goes on in the mind of a terrorist. You see, there are 8 phases in this. In the first phase is the structural priming. The conditions are created for violent ideas. A person, when he is born or when he does his education, initially he or she is not a terrorist, but they are primed. They're primed to believe in a cause for which they are even ready to give their lives. After structural priming starts the ideological encoding. They are fed with material for indoctrination. Day and night. Like Goebbels, the propaganda minister of Hitler, believed in, to tell lies 1,000 times a day, people start believing it is a truth. This is exactly what happens when ideological indoctrination is done. And more so, like I'll discuss a little later on, with the internet coming in a big way, it has made the task of the handlers much easier. The next stage is the mobilization and recruitment. To carry on a terrorist attack or a task, they have to have people recruited for it. And who is the best person to be recruited? One who is radicalized the most. Because, like I said, once you prime him up so much with information, whether right or wrong, we're not talking on that aspect. But so much information comes to him or her, he or she starts believing this is the truth. This is the injustice happening with me or my community. And this is where they start getting recruited. Till about 2001, which I'll cover a little later on, generally the terrorists who came were considered uneducated from the poorer strata, where it was believed that mere little $100 or little 2,000, 3,000 rupees, they can carry out the acts. For example, those of us who would remember, in the 80s, an era came in Delhi where the Khalistani terrorists carried out transistor bomb attacks, where so much was the fear that before sitting on a public bench or in a bus or in a train, one would look left and right to see that there's nothing suspicious there. That was kind of fear which was there in us. And when investigations revealed the people who kept these transistor bombs were that time paid 100 rupees, 50 rupees. So for that meager amount, they were primed to kill people. The next stage in terrorist or terrorism comes is the organizational formation. An organization has to be created which will carry out the task given to it. And we saw in the case of what happened in the Red Fort terror attack. There were a group of 6 doctors belonging to different universities or different places where they were working. They formed a formal organization among themselves. Each one was given a specific task to carry out. Because like in any organization, if a task has to be carried out, it has to be delegated. The same thing happens with the terrorists also. The next phase comes is equipping and provisioning. Until unless they don't have the wherewithal to carry out a terror attack, that attack has no meaning. Mere words do not constitute a terror attack in that sense where they can take human lives. It's a crime, all right. But their aim is to take human lives, because that is where the sensation is created. That is where the international media attention comes into play. So they need material to carry it out. And what did we see in the Red Fort terror attack? 2,900 kgs of ammonium nitrate. Whereas since 2012, it is a regulated item as per law in the country, but yet they were able to collect on such a big scale. Today, we go to a local kirana shop and we purchase 5 kgs of atta. When we get home, there are so many people looking at us. And imagine they accumulated 2,900 kgs of a material which is restricted in sale. So that is the level planning that these people had carried out. The next stage comes is the design and direction of the terrorist operations. Every terrorist attack aims to maximize maximum damage, be it to property or be it to human life, because that is where they will get the publicity. Because the more publicity a terrorist organization gets, the more they feel their cause is heard globally. And as we saw, these Red Fort terrorists had planned to carry out terrorist attacks in various religious places, in various places where there was a large footfall of human population. It was thanks to our investigative agencies that these people were caught well in time, and the one explosion which took place, he was on his run. Had he exploded his car anywhere in a lane near Red Fort, we all know how the lanes near Red Fort are overcrowded with people, the damage would have been much more. On 19th April 1995 in Oklahoma in USA, where 3,000 kg of ammonium nitrate were used to carry out a terrorist attack, 267 people lost their lives. And that is America, where the concentration or the density of the human population is very less compared to India. We all know the Red Fort area, how crowded it is. Then the second last step is the terrorist action, where the action per se is carried out. And again, thanks to our investigative agencies, they stopped the act before it reached its intended target. We lost 30 lives. It's very sad, but then a larger destruction was avoided. But the aim was very clear of these spots or the timing that they had chosen. And the last stage in the fundamental cycle of a terrorism or a terrorist is the post-operational narratives and reproduction. Once an act is carried out, they have to sell the act to the general public, giving all sorts of wrong stories. But then from their side, they have to sell the act. They have to justify the act, that because you did to us in so and so year, so we did it as a revenge. Once we have understood the cycles through which a terrorist or a terrorism functions, it becomes clear now to proceed to the next phase. Coming to phase 3, that is the profile of global terrorism till 2001. Now, why 2001 is a benchmark year chosen? Because this was the year when you all would remember the attacks on the 2 World Trade Centers were carried out in US. And that, like the Red Fort terror attack in India, that attack again shook every global citizen, because it was for the first time when trained people piloted aircrafts and struck inside the World Trade Centers. There were pilots who were either under training or already trained. And as you all know, training for a pilot isn't simple. It requires a lot of time, apart from a lot of money, of course. But such was their dedication to their cause that for years they studied flying with the final aim of carrying out this terrorist attack. And who was funding them? Osama bin Laden, who again was a literate guy. He had done his BTech in civil engineering. He was not a poor guy. He belonged to one of the richest families of Saudi Arabia. Money was no problem for him. Education was no problem for him. Neither was education a problem for the pilots who piloted the plane inside the World Trade Center. And that is where the word formally originated, white collar terror. So like I said, for the first time, trained people belonging to rich families, well-off families, they took part in such terrorist attacks. Till then, it was generally believed that the terrorists who operate worldwide either are uneducated or less educated, which we saw many times. I remember as a child, that time there was no cable TV, internet. One had not even heard of what is internet. There were no smartphones either. So whatever we used to read in the newspapers, whenever any terrorist used to get caught, he was either a daily wage laborer or he was working in one of the professions, at the lower level. But never I remember reading as a child in the newspapers that time of anyone, a terrorist caught who was well educated. So generally the feeling till 2001 was they used to be uneducated or less educated. Then they generally belong to poor backgrounds. Because money is always a factor which is seen to entice a person to do something wrong or illegal. And sometimes the poverty levels of a person are so low that he or she is willing to do anything for a mere 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 rupees, which we saw in many cases. Generally, these people who carried the terrorist attacks were unemployed. They had no regular source of income. They would take on tasks here and there. It was easy to convince them to put something under a bench or near a bus stop or on a platform in the railway station. And generally, the people who would get caught earlier were generally of this strata. Never do I remember as a child that a person on a regular job would be doing this act. Then, of course, one of the things generally associated with most terrorists before 2001 was they had a criminal background. Because they had a criminal background, they used to mix around with people uh, opposed to law of the nation. It was easy for the terrorist to approach such people because, again, because of criminal background they had, no employment, less money, they would be ready to take on any task. Like we often hear of the word supari killing, where for a small sum of money somebody is hired to kill someone without scant regard to the other human life because he's getting money. On a similar scale, these people would carry out the terrorist attacks or aid in carrying out a terrorist attack. And lastly, they were always a misfit in society. They would generally be isolated. People would not talk much with them. They would not talk much because the way they used to talk, the way their mindset was there, obviously no one cultured would like to interact with them. This was the general profile of global terrorists till 2001. But like I said, everything changed after the World Trade Center attack in New York, when it was realized that people with such high education had taken part in the terrorist attack. Now, another thing, when well-educated people belonging to rich and reputed families become terrorists, it gives a so-called credibility to the cause of terrorism. Because when somebody is well-placed, he speaks something, it has more value on the media. A common man may say the same thing, but his words will never be flashed on the national media of any nation. But if a high-placed man or a woman speaks something, obviously it becomes breaking news, which you all are aware. So when the educated and the people belonging to rich backgrounds started becoming terrorists, the terrorists felt that the cause was getting a lot of credibility. So the focus shifted as to why a person who was so well educated would go into this. One of the probably the biggest turning point which came was when social media were launched in a big way. In 1997, the first social media site was 6 Degrees networking site. It was followed by the launch of LiveJournal and Blogger networking sites, precursors to the WhatsApp of today, the Facebook, the Instagram of today. These were the initial social media networking sites. And this made communication very, very easy. People with a criminal bent of mind, people homed onto the terrorist cause, became easier for them to communicate. Earlier, the internet was very expensive. Like some of us would remember, when the mobiles were launched in India, even the incoming calls used to be charged. So the general practice was, moment the incoming call comes on a mobile, you cut the call, go to the nearest landline and then give a call. But then, as internet became cheap, more and more people started accessing to it. Today with things like encrypted communication, it has become very easy for the people to communicate with each other, especially those who have something evil in their mind. And this helped the white collar terrorists plan things much better. Because a person who is well educated, if he decides to do something evil, it becomes very difficult to catch him or her. Because a well-educated, a well-trained person thinks about 100 things which a uneducated person cannot think of. Coming on to phase 4, that is terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir post 2019. 2019, because that was the year when Article 370 and 35A were abrogated. And that was indeed a turning. I can tell you from my personal experience serving in the army, I was posted in a place called Patan. Of course, Brigadier Kuan Rajiv has got much more experience in CENJOWS than me. But whatever little experience I have, I was posted in my regiment in 2009 and 10 in a place called Patan, which is midway between Srinagar and Baramulla. And that is part of the infamous triangle where maximum terrorism used to happen, Patan, Baramulla, Sopore, that area. In 2009 and 10, for days at a stretch, the army convoys could not move on the roads of Srinagar because of the heavy stone pelting that would take place. But everything changed after Article 370 and 35A were abrogated in 2019. It's been 6 years, not a single stone throwing incident has been reported from Jammu and Kashmir. I was in Srinagar 2 months back for the Kashmir Literature Festival. I roamed around. Things are totally different. So this, after Article 370 was abrogated, peace started setting in the Kashmir Valley. The terrorism started waning. And if you look at the statistics from 2018 to 2024, the number of civilians killed, the security forces killed in action, and the terrorists killed, we see there's a decline. Because this is the peace that abrogation of 370A has brought in Jammu and Kashmir. Terrorism has not finished in totality, but there has been a great decline. This is what is upsetting the terrorists and Pakistan. This is what they never wanted. They've never wanted peace to reign in Jammu and Kashmir. "2019 also saw the PAFF, the People's Anti-Fascist Front, being raised as to give a secular name to the terrorist organizations. Because till 2019, the terrorist organization operating in Jammu and Kashmir had Islamic names. So to give it a secular name, PAAFF was raised. And like I said, as terrorism started waning in Jammu and Kashmir after 2019, Pakistan started broadening the local Muslim support base, including the overground workers, and most of them were the white-collared people. Because now it was becoming tough because of the action being taken by the security agencies, the success that the security agencies were getting, and their uneducated terrorists were being caught very often. So they started indoctrinating the educated people, what we also know as the overground workers. Technology is now being used in a very big way. Things are planned much well in advance. Like we saw the case of the Red Fort terror attack. For 2 years, these guys had been planning. And just one poster which appeared in Nogam on 19th September, which eventually blew the lid off the entire thing. So again, the same point which I made earlier, a person who is well educated, a person who is intelligent, he or she can plan things in a much better manner. And there's a great delay in catching such people. Hence the word again, the white-collar terror. Social media, again, is being used in a very big way. I personally feel it is time that a country should have social media monitoring platforms. There's no harm. If you and I are not doing anything wrong, why should we fear it? There's always a talk about privacy. Given a choice between privacy and national security, what is important? Any day it is national security. Only that person fears about privacy who has something to hide. People like you and me have nothing to hide. So we need such measures because now the things are getting on a very different dimension. The last point is the communal hatred which is fanned by the mainstream electronic media. In the last few years, we have seen how one mainstream electronic media has been behaving. When you repeat a thing over and over again, day and night, we create more fissures. And when fissures are created, they also engulf the white-collared people into the acts of terrorism. Here, I would like to bring 2 points about China. Mao Zedong, the first chairman of the Chinese Communist Party after the Chinese Civil War, he did many blunders. The Great Famine, the Great Leap Forward. But till date, he isn't remembered for the wrongdoings he did. The point I'm making is there's no point raking up the past again and again. Somebody's done a wrong thing. One should learn from it. One should learn from the past and ensure it is not repeated rather than being stuck up in the past. They do not remember Mao Zedong for the wrongs he did. They don't talk about it. We all in our lifetime, in our capacities earlier, we would have committed mistakes. But to harp on it again and again only creates fissures. And the second example that I would like to give China is Genghis Khan, the Mongolian invader who attacked China in 1205 AD, is supposed to be more barbarous and torturous than Aurangzeb was. But in China, in modern China, they don't talk about Genghis Khan. The point I'm making is many historical wrongs have happened. There's no doubt on that. There are ways to ensure that the remedy is done. But the mainstream electronic media, by playing such things day in, day out, we are giving birth to the half front within. Today, our country is at a very critical juncture where we are staring at a two-front war. We need such programs where everyone is united and not divided. And here the mainstream electronic media plays the biggest role because out of the 146 crore Indian citizens, 117 crore Indians watch the mainstream electronic media. They are the biggest source of disseminating information. We all watch numerous channels, whether India or foreign. I regularly watch CNN, BBC, France 24. Very rarely do I find programs on their channels where communalism is discussed day in, day out. We need to review this. We need to have a rethink. Is it giving us the advantage or is it creating problems for us? Coming to the last phase, that is curbing ideological terrorism and white-collar terror. The first thing that we need to do is we need to audit madrasas because prevention is better than cure. More often than not, when one goes little deep into the background of the terrorists, whether white-collar or blue-collar, link emerges to one or the other madrasa, to one or the other cleric. We need to audit it. It has to be done on a national war mission because this is now becoming a breeding ground for people to get indoctrinated. We should have a national curriculum for the madrasas where modern education is given. Have your religious teachings definitely, but have modern education also. And there's a connected is my second point, review religious sermons across all faiths. Let it be for all faiths. Anyone who is giving a religious sermon with the aim or something nefarious needs to be taken to task there and then. because it is the religious leaders who carry maximum weight in our country. It has to be done for all to ensure that no one gets away by indoctrinating people. The next point is references in religious books that propagate terrorism need to be openly spoken against by clerics. It is the clerics of each religion who have to come forward and say that this particular thing which was written in so and so year, when the situation was different than what is today, has no meaning today. It is only when the clerics will speak openly will the uneducated people or the white collar people who are getting indoctrinated on the basis of certain clauses in religious books will stop getting indoctrinated. But how many have done it? We all read and research a lot. Are there any such examples where any cleric has said, no, this particular thing which was written thousands of years back doesn't hold today? But when one goes into the antecedents of a terrorist, he or she says, because this particular clause was written in so and so religious book, so I felt I have to take up this cause. It has to be done. Again, I would say at a national level. Clerics from all religions have to be gotten together and they have to formulate such views. The next point is de-radicalization programs based on successful models in Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Singapore. Now, of course, countries like Malaysia and Indonesia also. Here, I would like to speak about Saudi Arabia. One example I would like to give. You see, when 2001 World Trade Center attack happened, engineered by Osama bin Laden, who, like I said earlier, was a graduate in civil engineering, apart from belonging to a very rich family. Saudi Arabia realized the time bomb that they're sitting on and the inferno it can cause to their nation first, forget about the other countries. So in 2006, Saudi Arabia introduced a de-radicalization program called Muna Saha. And this program encompassed, firstly, teaching those terrorists who had been caught about the religious right things, telling them that so-and-so clause is outdated, doesn't have relevance today. So the first step was to telling them the right religious teachings. The second part of the Muna Saha de-radicalization program in Saudi Arabia was they would be given all support to lead a normal life, be it psychological, be it financial, even if it entailed getting that person a job, even if it entailed getting that person a house. Because as we all know that a person with a criminal background, more often than not, goes back to crime. It is very few who do not go back on the path of being a criminal again. Same is the case with terrorists. Because so much of poison has been fed into them that if there is not a structured de-radicalization program, more often than not, they will go back to it. If Saudi Arabia can do it, why can't we do it? And the other countries which I just mentioned. It has to be structured, it has to be formulated, and it has to be implemented. And the success rate of the Muna Saha de-radicalization program in Saudi Arabia is more than 80%. Even that is a very high figure. So very minuscule cases in Saudi Arabia go back to being a terrorist again. So we need to study such models and implement them on a war footing. I researched a lot. I couldn't find any such program being run in India. So this is what our nation needs to do on top priority. Another thing, what happens out in Malaysia is they have a concept of e-imams, electronic imams. What it means is that they have dedicated numbers where there are imams on duty around the clock. And any person who has a misconception about the religion, he or she contacts the e-imam at any time of the day and night, and the questions are answered. We need to have a similar program here too. Because when a person is undergoing this phase of getting indoctrinated, he or she can have questions at any time of the day or night. And if there's some helpline, some number where he or she can contact to, at that particular moment, the thing can be nipped in the bud. So we need to study the successful de-radicalization program being carried out in many countries worldwide. The next point is enhanced interaction of eminent persons of respective religions with the masses. We have eminent people in various fields, be it defense, be it police, be it administrative services, be it the media, be it doctors, any field we take, we have eminent persons of all religions in our country. These people should be made to interact more and more with the common masses because they will have a big effect. For example, a senior veteran who's retired from the higher ranks in the armed forces, belonging to a special religion, can be sent to a village in Jammu and Kashmir to give a talk to the young children, to the youth there. The impact he will have will be tremendous. Because there, the villagers, once they interact with a person of a high stature of his or her community, his words will resonate deep within. But rarely do I find such things happening. It is more restricted to TV channels or podcasts here and there. How many villages would be there in Jammu and Kashmir? A fixed number. It can't be infinite. A fixed number. Divide them into district-wise. Allocate a distinguished, eminent person of that particular religion to go there. How much time it takes and how much money would it involve? Peanuts compared to the destruction that a terrorist can cause. Same thing goes to for Punjab. Certain places where the Khalistan movement is gaining traction. Eminent Sikh personalities should be sent there on a regular basis. You see, once you are young as a child or as in the youth, when you see people of your community, of your place doing well, they always serve as role models. We need to encourage this, formulate this in a formal manner. And the last point is, our country needs to instill the culture of religion being a private affair between God and you. And one perfect example which I give on the national media always is the Indian Army. When commanding either a battalion or a brigade or a formation, the officers have troops from all religions under their command. They attend the religious functions of the troops depending on the composition of the battalion or the formation. Whenever there are official functions, they attend. But in the day-to-day working, religion is never discussed. Because in the day-to-day working in the Indian Army, religion is always treated as a private affair between God and man. Indian Army is religious. We follow the religion of our troops. Before going on a long convoy, there are prayers carried out specific to the religion, the percentage of the religious soldiers who are there. But that is it. This is what we need to do. This will bring down the so-called indoctrination to a very large extent. Because when such people are caught, they're interrogated, what comes on the public domain, it is always linked to certain factors that they felt their religion was being persecuted. they felt so and so wrong thing happened so and so years back or whatever. I recently wrote an article that don't democracies progress? Because in various forums that I'm in, whenever one would talk about China's progress, the standard answer given was because China is a communist nation, because China is an authoritarian nation, they're one political party, that's why China's progress. So that had me thinking, don't democracies progress? So then I wrote an article on that. And I took 3 countries apart from China, Finland, Japan, and Germany, of how they were devastated and how they progressed and became developed nations in a short time. So one thing during my research which came out, that these democracies who progressed in a very short time and have reached where they are today, have one thing in common apart from various factors, and that is they have kept religion as a private affair. Though unlike China, where you can't be religious publicly, it has to be within the 4 walls, in countries like Finland, Germany, Japan, you can be religious publicly, but that is it. Religion is not mixed with governance. So this buttresses my last point. We as a nation should instill the culture of religion being a private affair between God and. I have finished my talk, and I'm again very grateful to CENJOWS for having given me the opportunity. In case there are any questions, it would be my honor to answer.